Shall we pray? Precious heavenly Jesus, we give glory unto thee this evening to see that you loved us and you really care for us. You paid the price, and here we are gathering dividends. How blessed we are to be children of God. Now we report to duty this evening, Lord, to worship you, to glorify your name, to magnify your name, doing our best, realizing that we are human beings and you are God. Rich in mercy, Lord, not seeking your justice, but seeking your grace, your mercy and pardon. We have worshipped you the best we can. Lord, accept our worship. And how are we going to know that you have accepted our worship? Is when you speak to our souls and you breathe the word of life into our souls. Lord, I lend you my body, I lend you my tongue, I lend you my mind. And I believe these here are also doing the same, all for the glory of your name. Bless the service so that by the end of it, let everyone have a testimony that God spoke to me, all for the glory of your name. In the name of Jesus Christ, we give thanks. Amen. Let us read from the book of Romans. Chapter 12. Verse 1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but ye be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. May God add blessings to the reading of his word. You can sit down. Good evening, everybody. God bless you very much. We assemble here to worship our God and to hear from him. Let me give you something very little. According to our culture in Uganda, I don't know here in Nigeria, but this is our culture in Uganda, that when a man has property, he makes a will. I don't know if you do wills here. So a man makes a will, and usually a will is a secret. So finally that man dies. Like for example, if your pastor dies today, I know his wife doesn't want to hear that. But if your pastor dies today, he is just your pastor. The next Sunday, you'll be busy trying to see somebody to replace him. Because you cannot remain without a pastor. If your pastor dies, and I receive a phone, oh, my friend has died. Please, is it possible that you delay his burial until I come there? When I'm there, I am burying my friend. After burying him, I look for others. Life continues. But there is a specific group which is affected, whether it wants it or not, by the death of that man. Because to them it is not a pastor. To them it is a father, it is a husband. Because the death of that man automatically changes the status of that woman. From then onwards, she is called a widow. That's why he doesn't want to listen to such a message. But I'm bringing a point. Now, at the burial, let us go to the burial. Many people will come. Some have come to bury a friend. I mean in Uganda. Others have come to bury their pastor. So in our country, after the burial have taken place, they announce who has the will of this man. Because we have to know his mind. What was on his mind before he passed away. So that a will is very important. Now, when they are looking for the will, the church wouldn't be interested in the will. Because they just bury and wait for another pastor. The friends won't be interested about the will. Because they are not a part and parcel of the inheritance. You see, many villagers will come, but they are not interested in the will. But there is a special group that are really interested to know. My father owned a Mercedes-Benz. Who is it allocated to? My father owned property on street number this and this. Who is it allocated to? They are interested to hear. Today, women in Uganda are told, come on, if your husband dies, learn how to cry properly. Because if you continue crying and crying, things will pass through your hands and you'll never know. By the time you stop crying, things have gone. So that's a special group. While other activities are taking place, they are focusing on what is in the will. Now today, we are children of our God Father. To us, our God died and rose again. Hallelujah. He didn't die and remain there. And he went to heaven. And he left us a will. And what is that a will? That a will is the word of God. So every gathering, we come to hear from the will of God. Because in this will of God, in the context of the message of the hour, the message, the purpose of the message is not to make you a bride. No. The purpose of the message is to remind you that you are a bride. And so since you are a bride, behave like a bride. Walk like a bride. Act like a bride. Because a bride is a special class of people. Now this evening, in the will of our Father, we are talking about the power of mind. I always say, this is me saying, that a monster that lives with you. The power of mind. If I don't finish this subject today, probably tomorrow we will pick over. The power of mind. Now, in the 7 church ages, we find out that in each age, every age has its own pressures. Every age has its own problems. But again, we find out that every age has its own overcomers. And in every age has its own specific reward. We find out that those who overcame in the first church age, their reward was, I will give you to eat on the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Oh, how wonderful that a promise is. Then we find out that in the second age, we find out that he that overcometh, will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, save the one that receives it. Another nice reward. Then we find that in the next church age, we find that the reward was, he that overcometh and keepeth my word unto the end, to him I will give power over the nations. Another nice reward. Then the next reward, we find it in Revelation chapter 3, verse 5. He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before the angels. Oh, what a reward. Each age had its specific reward. To be a pillar in the temple of God, very wonderful. To be given a new name, very wonderful. But look here, the reward to the last day overcomer, you find it in Revelation chapter 3, verse 21, I think it says, to him that overcometh, will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even I also overcame, and I am set down with my Father in his throne. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen. To be a pillar in the temple of God, very wonderful. To have access to the tree of life, very wonderful. But look, to sit with Jesus in his throne, Hallelujah. Extremely wonderful. Now, I quoted it here last Sunday, that in the message world, you see, each class of people has its own way of talking. To the extent that even when you are in a bus or somewhere, and the message believer talks, you know this is a message believer. So in the message world, a lot is talked about concerning the soul. Much is talked about concerning our bodies. And a lot of it is talked about concerning the spirit. Body, soul, and spirit. Or body, spirit, and soul. Whatever order you want to bring them in. To me, they are all the same. And literal is talked about, or hardly. Literal is talked about on the mind. Yet, the mind is not your body. The mind is not your soul. The mind is not your spirit. Yet you carry the mind. Right here, you have the mind. In your office, you are with the mind. When you go to bed, you are with your mind. When you are waking up, you are with your mind. Think about that. You are going to discover that your mind is not you. You are going to discover that you and your mind are two different things. Let me drop in this thing as a food for thought. You claim that you are saved, and thank you. You claim that you are filled with the Holy Ghost, and thank you. But after getting saved, after receiving the baptism of the Holy Ghost, remember when you caught yourself lying, you caught yourself thinking funny. Your thoughts were so funny until you asked yourself, is it me who is thinking like this? And indeed, it was you. Really, is it me? And I'm saying that I'm going to heaven. And I'm thinking like that? No, it cannot be me. I'm assuring you, it was you. Because you will discover that your mind is no respecter of persons. Even the rich have mind. Even the poor have mind. Even your president have mind. I have mind. Your pastor has mind. But now, if each age has its own pressures, but again still each age has its own specific overcomers, we are in the last church age. Do you believe that? Yes. And what we are to overcome is not what the believers in the first age overcame. Our pressures are not the same as the pressures of the third church age. What we face is not what they faced. So now, what are we to overcome? That is a serious question. What are we to overcome? Now, you will eventually discover that the thing you are to overcome is your mind. Because in the message, Laodicean Church Age, I have it on page 360. Let me read and you listen. It says like this: to him that overcometh, will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame, and I am set down with my Father in his throne. Now, what are we to overcome? That is a normal question to ask here. But that is not the actual thought of this verse. For is it not so much what we are to overcome? No, let me read it again. But this is not the actual thought of this verse. For it is not so much what we are to overcome, but how we are to overcome. Now, this is logical. For does it matter much what we are to overcome, as long as we know how we can overcome? I'm reading this quote from the 7th Church Age book in Laodicean Church Age. Let me read it again. To him that overcometh, will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame, and I am set down with my Father in his throne. Now, what are we to overcome? That is the normal question to ask here. But that is not the actual thought of this verse. For it is not so much what we are to overcome, but how we are to overcome. Now this is logical. For does it matter what we are to overcome, as long as we know how we can overcome? Because what you are to overcome, whether you want it or not, it will come. So what to overcome is not the issue, because it will come. But when it comes, how are you going to overcome? Now, the pastor was announcing that there is prayer this night. And I like prayer. And I need your prayers. But did you know that when you pray, the purpose of prayer is not to change you, and real prayer does not change you. Amen. But when you pray, your intention is to change God. That's the primary intention of prayer. You are sweet talking God, expressing your desire, So your prayer's intention is to change God. And when God is changed, he sends you the word. He sends you the word. And it is the word that changes you when you receive it.
Glory.
The devil does not care if you come to attend church.
The devil.
He's not scared if you come to attend service. That's not an issue to him. He has never missed a service.
Amen.
He has never missed a service. Look at all these empty chairs. You think they are empty. They are not empty. They are properly occupied.
That's true.
So the devil does not care if you are here. He really does not care. If anything, he can remind you at home and says, do you remember what the pastor said last service? That you go early. Come on, stop your work and go early. Take the bus and go early. And the devil is telling you, come on, leave the work and go to the church. Because he's already there and punctual. But the devil makes sure that your presence in the church is rendered useless. Because the devil knows who you are more than you know yourself. The devil knows your potential more than you know yourself. In the message, God is the power to transform. Brother Branham preached that message on 11th September 65. He's talking about the deformer, the devil, the perverter. And that's what the devil does. Now in that message, he's talking like a field man, like an agriculturist. You see, our God, when he meets engineers, he talks in the engineering language. And when he meets the doctors, he talks in the doctor language. But in this message, God's power of transformation, he's talking like a farmer. He brings an example of a maize plant. And he talks about that creeping plant. You see, when you go to the fields, you find that there is a maize plant which carries a seed. And then, if you are weeding, you are making sure that you weed off those creeping plants. Now, if you would go in the mind of that creeping plant, its intention is not to remove the maize plant from the garden. No. The intention of that creeping plant is only to cripple the plant. To deform it. And as long as the plant is deformed, it will never bear seed. And the purpose of the farmer to plant the maize plant was that at the harvest, he gets seeds. Are we together?
Amen.
The purpose of the farmer is, I am expecting a harvest. But the intention of the creeping plant is no seed. Remain in the church, sit there, sing, shout, probably pay tithes and everything, but you will bear no seed.
Bear no seed.
So on paragraph 70, listen to the spirit of Elijah talking to you this evening.
Amen.
The deformer. I know this seems to be rather strange to speak of it in this way, but that's what he was. He perverted. Pervert means to be changed over, made something different. It is in God's power God's power to transform. Preached on 11th September 65, paragraph 70, for the sake of the screen. To be changed over, made something different, and the form is the same thing. Yet, it is still the same seed, but it is deformed. Now listen. Your mind is a decision maker. Do you agree with that? Yes. In the message, the greatest battle ever fought, paragraph 70, preached on 11th March 62, it says, decisions are made in the mind, the head. There is where Satan meets you. And the decisions are because that God made a man that way. Your mind is a factory for knowledge. Your mind is a store center. Your mind is a big store where you store invents and all your emotions. Your mind is the magnet for the desire of knowledge and understanding. Your mind is a steering wheel for the vehicle of your affections and feelings. Your mind has the ability to either maximize or minimize your experiences. Your mind can take a seed word inside you and turn it into a harvest. Your mind can take your feeling and turn it into a terrible experience. Your mind is so strategic that all demonic powers are focused on your mind. The devil will never come and hold you by arm and say, come on, I've got woman for you. Here she is. Go and commit adultery. The devil does not do it like that. The devil only works on your mind. And you go willingly. You just go. The devil will not bring a cigarette and say, hey, you smoke. He's smarter than that. But it just starts by peer pressure. Somebody is talking to you. Oh, how sweet it is. And finally you say, let me get a taste. From a taste, you become a smoke addict. Your mind creates feelings and thoughts. You can go and read it in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, 3 to verse 6. Now, church, why do we come to church? You see, we are living in an age where there is a lot of information, and we are given to understand that information is power. But let me remind you, bride of Jesus Christ, we don't come to church to receive information. We come to church to get revelation, not information. Okay, if you come here to receive information from a preacher from Uganda, you are in a long place. We come here to understand the will of God. Where is He positioning us? What is our inheritance? Remember, Jesus didn't die to give you your inheritance. No. Your inheritance, you had it before the foundation of the world. But Jesus died to make your inheritance real. To make it real to you. To reach a stage where you realize a realization. And you know that God is talking to you. It is you. It is you. So that's what it means when the spirit of Elijah is talking to you about sitting in heavenly places. What does it mean? It means the position of the believer. You'll begin to understand that we are blessed in heavenly places because we fight against the principalities of heavenly. So that's why it says that if I am prayed up and you are prayed up and everybody is prayed up and we are ready for the message, then the Holy Ghost comes. How would it be when the Holy Ghost is moving over every heart that has been regenerated and become anew in Christ Jesus, and all sins under the blood in perfect worship, with our hands up to God and our hearts lifted up, setting in heavenly places in Christ Jesus, whereby your mind is free from sin. Look here. You kneel down to pray. Really, it is in you who has knelt down. How many times have you managed to close your eyes and you focus on one thing all the way through? No, you have not managed. Along the way, when you were praying, probably you are praying asking God to give you the baptism of the Holy Ghost. All of a sudden, your son who is troubling you comes to the picture. Your daughter who is doing this comes to the picture. Really, you were praying for the Holy Ghost and your husband comes into the picture. The Bible says, you are not focused. So that means you are wasting your time. It is very simple. You are not going to get what you are asking. You quote yourself like that. And you cannot tell it over. Because your mind was simply wandering. Hallelujah. Yes, if all sins were under the blood, in perfect worship. You know, there was a reason why the 7 seals had to be opened. God will never call you to entertain you. God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Israel is not an entertainer. There is a reason why 7 seals had to be opened, and it had to be done by a mighty angel, not an ordinary angel, a mighty angel. We know the revelation of the first seal, the second seal, or other seals, but we still believe that there are some things that have to be revealed. But all in all, there is a reason why 7 seals were opened. Because God is looking for perfect worshippers. Did you hear that? God is looking for perfect worshippers. And especially under the 7th seal. You see, there is no controversy about the first seal. There is no controversy about the second seal. Nothing to fight about on the 3rd seal. The 4th seal, though it is tricky in itself, but there is no contention about it. Oh, the 5th seal, we know it belongs to the Jews. But when you come under the 7th seal, wow! You just open the Pandora box. Yet under that 7th seal, God is looking for perfect worshippers. Once again, God is looking for people who he does not shy away to call them my people. God is looking for people he's ready to bless. Until when he's blessing them, he gets a reason to explain to the angels that the reason I'm blessing these people is because of this and this and this. He's looking for a reason why he kept the best wine to a special class of people. Why did you keep the best wine for these people? Especially in this evil age. Really, it is an evil age. It is so evil that every prophet that saw it said, my, who will survive? And yet, it is in this same age that God is looking for perfect worshippers. True, you have to bear with me and agree according to the message that God is an object of worship. Is that right? God is an object of worship. But he is not so cheap to be worshipped by everybody.
It's not so cheap.
Oh, my pronunciation. He is not so cheap to be worshipped by every thick and hairy. No. No, 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 no. One day, Jesus was on his campaign. Then a certain man came running. Master, I'm ready to follow you. Where you go, I go. Then Jesus looks at him and says, the birds have where to nest, and the foxes have holes. But the way I see on you, the Son of Man doesn't have where to put his head. In other words, the man was rejected. Then immediately the Bible says, Jesus turns to another one. There! He says, hello, come and follow me. Then the man says, Master, you know I have a dying father. Let me first go and bury my father, and I come. Jesus says, no, you come and follow me. Let the dead bury their dead. Two different individuals. One is willing to come and is rejected. Another is not even interested and is compelled. Our Jehovah of miracles, his wonders to perform. We see it in the manifestation of the third pool, where Sister Hattie was there doing whatever she was doing. And the children were there mocking, laughing, and doing anything. But when the manifestation of the third pool struck, God gave salvation to people who are not seeking it. God gave the Holy Ghost to people who are not looking for it.
Yes.
You can read between the lines.
Yes.
Because if you are the bride of Jesus Christ, you have the potential to read between the lines. Do you love God? Do you love his word? Remember, God is always successful where he is celebrated. Your mind is not you. A simple illustration is, this is my arm. Isn't so? This is my ear. This is my eye. But who is me? Who owns this arm? Who owns this ear? Who owns these eyes? Who is me? So that means me is not this eye, me is not this hand, me is not this ear. But me owns this hand and owns this. But who is this me? Your mind is not you. When you got saved, it is you who got saved, but not your mind. Your mind was never saved. And today is not saved. And tomorrow it will not be saved. When you received the baptism of the Holy Ghost, it is you who received the baptism of the Holy Ghost, not your mind. Your mind was never baptized with the Holy Ghost. And even today is not baptized with the Holy Ghost. And even tomorrow, it will not be baptized with the Holy Ghost. That's how serious it is. Because when God saved you, it was God's project to save your soul. But hear this, it is your project to constantly renew your mind. As we go along, you will discover that it is your project to work on your mind. Remember the other time I told you that God never calls the perfect, but he perfects the called. And it is a process. God never calls the holy. Remember when he said, it is only the sick that needs a physician. He never calls the holy, but he sanctifies the called. So, it is not your mind that received the baptism of the Holy Ghost, and it is not God's intention to baptize your mind with the Holy Ghost. You will understand why. If you read properly the greatest battle ever fought, you will finally discover that there is a portion in your body which is not covered by the blood of Jesus Christ. Do you know why? Because the devil cannot be saved. The devil cannot be saved. Once the devil is covered by the blood of Jesus Christ, it is saved. So when God saved you, he covered you with the blood of Jesus Christ. That's why you are saved. But there is a portion where the devil gains access every minute of the day, every minute of the year, every second of your life. He comes and goes without being affected by the blood of the Lamb. Because you have got it. It is the battleground. I'm going to give you 2 examples, or 3, according to time, to show you that the baptism of the Holy Ghost and your mind are 2 different things. You know, Brother Branham is our example. Nobody disputes that. Hallelujah. There is no contention about that. A man filled with the Holy Ghost. The first fruits of the last harvest. Hallelujah. That is the message terminology. But watch him as he climbs the electric pole, ready to commit suicide. Come on, don't tell me that it was the Holy Ghost telling him that. And the man was serious. It was not the Holy Ghost. It was his mind telling him, you have nothing to live for. Remember, he never stopped on that. Look at him holding a gun in his hands and praying, our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, and pulls the trigger. That was not the Holy Ghost. Yet he was filled Who is the Holy Ghost? Look at the mighty Elijah the prophet. Follow him at Mount Carmel. Look at the mighty prophet pouring fire from heaven. Look how courageous he killed all those false prophets. But in the evening, he receives a letter from that woman, Jezebel. And the letter was saying, if I don't do to you as you did to my prophets, may my gods curse me. Tell Elijah about the fire coming from heaven. That was history. The man woke up very early in the morning and look at him running away from that woman, Jezebel. Don't tell me that it was the Holy Ghost telling Elijah to run away. Because God had to catch him in his steps and ask him, Elijah, what are you doing here? Elijah, what are you doing here? You see the difference? Yeah, that's true. The evidence is clear. Look at John the Baptist. The man who received the baptism of the Holy Ghost, even in the mother's womb. He was so special. For you have to fast and pray. Many years, going hungry. And probably what you picked, you don't even know if it is the Holy Ghost. Because you are always fighting with your pastor. And we understand by the Bible that the Holy Ghost means being humble. But for you, what you have makes you